welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners, and welcome to our very first Halloween special. You may recall earlier this year, our lovely assistant Morgan helped us to mummify a very particular specimen. Well, we're about to do the big reveal, but first, to recap. Last year, my younger brother asked us to hide a body for him. It was his real doll. As in, that kind of real doll. So we said, no, no way. Are you crazy? Sure. And we got stuck with this thing for 8 months in our front office. After fielding some rather disgusting suggestions on what to do with it, our very own Kemetic friend Yamanu said, well, why don't you mummy wrap it? Brilliant! So that's what we did. And we made a couple of educational videos about it. First, all the prep work of cutting strips in order to make the bandages in order to wrap this thing, and then actually wrapping the body with all of the accessories that would be needed for an Egyptian mummification. And we've got those videos on Patreon. They're in the exclusive content, and so are all of our outtakes. I think we all gained a new appreciation for how hard the ancient embalmers had to work to do their job. But we, conveniently enough, didn't learn everything about the personal history of this specific real doll until after we had spent 3 hours handling and wrapping this thing.
He got it used. He got it used. He got it used.
I think poor Morgan's gonna need therapy. But remember, here at the Kemetic How-To Guide, education is fun. So tonight we're going to explore mummy masks and why the ancient Egyptians used them. The most famous mummy mask, of course, is King Tut's. And I would argue that it is one of the greatest works of human art. But perhaps because it's so iconic and it seems like such a good likeness of him, we tend to assume that the whole reason why the ancient Egyptians put masks over mummies was so that the soul would recognize the body in death, and a lot of books that's how they explain it. Well, there's more to it than just that. In funerary spells, the mask was referred to as the head of mystery, or the Lord of Vision, and its purpose was to let the deceased person see with the head of a god. And through this mask's divine power, which was activated by spells, it would protect the deceased from their enemies, and from the archetypical enemy of the dead being Set and his minions. And there's a spell from the Book of the Dead which is actually inscribed on the back of King Tut's mask, and it reads, Anubis speaks, the embalmer, lord of the divine hall, or the god's booth, when he has placed his hands on the coffin of, now named, insert name here, and has equipped him with what he needs. Hail, O beautiful of face, Lord of Vision, whom Ptah Sokar has gathered together, and whom Anubis has upraised, to whom Shu gave support, O beautiful of face among the gods. Your right eye is the night bark, your left eye is the day bark, and if you recall, when we say our prayer at the end of every service, may you sail and joy in the manjet bark, that's the day bark, and rest content in the sektet bark, that is the night bark, that the sun god takes through the underworld. And that's what they're referring to as the eyes of the mask. It says, your eyebrows are the Enid. The crown of your head is Anubis. The back of your head is Horus. Your lock of hair is Ptah Sokar. You, referring to the mask, are in front of, now named. He sees by means of you. You lead him to the goodly ways. You repel Set's band for him, and cast his enemies under his feet for him, in front of the Enid, in the great house of the noble in Heliopolis. You take the goodly way to the presence of Horus, the lord of the nobles. It's common in Egyptian spells for them to identify the different parts of the body with a deity, and that was a way of making someone divine or giving them divine protection. There are healing spells that do that, and in this case the mummy mask is identified with different deities so that it takes on their power and protects the person who is wearing it. One thing that I have to add, I think too many books suggest that the ancient Egyptians were basically superstitious children who actually thought mummification would bring a body back to life, and that in their tomb they would start eating and drinking and taking BMs down in their tomb. No. The ancient Egyptians didn't have our science, but they weren't stupid either. They knew that a body could never be the same after death. The whole purpose of the process of mummification was not to try to preserve it so that they could go on doing things. No, it was about making that person like Osiris, so that the different parts of their soul, their Ba and their Ka, which would be combined in the funeral rites into an Akh. That was the purpose, was to recombine the different parts of their being, and that they would be empowered like Osiris by going through the same rituals that were done for him by Anubis and by Isis and Nephthys. Notice that the same ritual, being the opening of the mouth, was used on a mummified body, but also on statues. If you think about it, a mummified body with its mask and all of its amulets, the Egyptians didn't think it would come back to life. To the Egyptians it was like a super statue, because it had been lived in once before. So once we mummified Jane Hotep, as we named her, the next step naturally was to make a mask for her. And that was kind of a lengthy process. I thought about trying to tape that, but that would have been like too crazy. But it did involve getting a plastic face mask from a craft store and getting some chicken wire and using paper mache. And that's something that, you know, pretty much anybody could do at home. I would just advise you, if you try to make a mummy mask, I wouldn't make it for yourself, because the chicken wire, when you cut the edges of it, those little ends are sharp. And it's better if you get, like we also have another mummy that we call Pat Uncommon, and you can see him here. And he started out as a Halloween dummy, and we wrapped him and then made a mask for him several years ago. And so that's how we knew what to do for Jane. And it took a long time, you know, to do the paper mache and stuff. If you're going to do that, give the layers of paper mache plenty of time to dry. And then it took about an evening to paint the whole thing, but here you go.
Archaeologists lusting for knowledge, unaware of the dangers lurking within, unleashing a force not meant for this world. Bride of the Mummy!
Okay. Oh my god. And now, okay. And now I gotta see if I can squeeze
Her mounds are making
yes,
this a little difficult.
yes, there we go.
Kind of have
Okay. In a traditional mummy, these bands would have had inscriptions on them identifying the four sons of Horus, who were supposed to guard, you know, organs of the body, and they also represented, you know, the four directions and good stuff like that. And the one down the center has a prayer to the sky goddess Nut, and that's actually what we have on hers. Jed Medoin Osir Jane Hotep. Jedes Hai Mut Nut Pesashri to Hamu An Hasakasabu Imi An Nut.
And just kind of get out of the way so I can get a close-up shot of that.
Yeah, so words spoken by the Osiris, Jane Hotep. She says, "Oh, Mother Nut, stretch yourself over me. Make me one of the imperishable stars in you, that I may not die." And that's taken from the inscription from an 18th dynasty coffin of singer of Amun, Hennetujebu. And so I shamelessly ganked her inscription.
I'm sure she would be totally okay with this and not at all offended.
Well, it's for learning. And
It's still gross.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But actually, and Hennetujebu, you could go and ask her, because her mummy is in St. Louis, Missouri. Her coffin was sent to Cleveland for restoration, and I don't know if it's still at the Cleveland Museum or if it's back in St. Louis. So if we go on a road trip one day, we can find out. See, mummifying really does transform a body, because you never look at that and guess that it was a sex doll. And neither will the rest of the neighborhood, because she is making a really convincing Halloween decoration. So if you want to see our actual videos where we are mummy wrapping this, almost life-size body — she'd be a little short if she were a real girl — those videos are on Patreon. And we had so much fun with this project that we decided to keep working with it. And now you can go and get your very own Bride of the Mummy t-shirt featuring Dear Jane Hotep. And I have to talk up our pal Morgan on this, because he came up with the Bride of the Mummy idea, and he did the trailer that you see at the beginning of this episode. He had a lot of fun with it. We had a lot of fun with it. He did the voiceover for it, and we're very grateful to have him on our team, because he adds a whole new dimension of creativity to the things that we do here. So he's been a really good sport.
Why? Why couldn't you swing for a new one?
We will be back again next month with more entertaining and educational videos, but for tonight, have a safe and happy Halloween, Samhain, and coming up, Feast of Koyak. And you'll be able to tune in on Friday nights, 8:30 Central Time, U.S. time, and we'll have our live services. We'll be observing the Feast of Koyak shortly, and you'll be able to find more links to good things in the description. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we hope to see you again really soon. In the meantime, this is Sharon wishing you Senempti.
They don't make water hot, no!
Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on lulu.com and shop for pagan supplies in my Etsy store. Check the description for links. And special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon.